Hi, I'm Emily Watkins, and this is the WBFO Disabilities Beat. This week, we continue our series, Voices of Disability Pride, with local musician and pastor, Reverend Chris Wylie, aka DJ Pastor Rock. Today, I share part of a recent conversation we had about the barriers he faced going into ministry as a disabled pastor. While this interview has been edited for length and clarity, you can listen to the entire interview on our website.
I am actually a United Methodist ordained elder, and that journey was not real easy for me. That was a complicated journey, as things are for people with disabilities, where I remember a friend of mine said, you'll have people who advocate for you and you'll have people who kind of push against you a little bit. And I certainly saw all of those things. But at the end of the day, I had a really good district superintendent and some really good allies, and I made it through the process. But it's a long process as it is, and it was complicated, like so many things with disability.
What were some of the parts of it that were complicated?
Just kind of the pushback, from people, and kind of not knowing disability themselves because they're non-disabled. So maybe a little bit of ableism, if I'm being frank, and just people being skeptical about whether or not you could do the job and that sort of thing. And early on, I didn't really get a lot of questions about my theology. I got more questions about my disability, which I had some issues with, because they're there really to kind of hear about me and where I am theologically, but it kind of shied away from that. Again, I had a lot of resistance just based on my disability. That was complicated. But again, I also had some really great allies, and that meant a lot. That's how I made it. I wasn't on my own.
Do you think your experiences as a disabled person have also influenced your theology or made you a better pastor?
Yeah, I do, actually. I think it's made me a better person. I think when anybody comes from a marginalized community, they know what it's like sort of to be on the outside of things. And so just having that awareness and kind of trending toward being more inclusive, being more aware, being more empathetic, being more understanding, I think goes a long way. And certainly that comes into play with, no matter what you're doing, but especially when you're thinking about matters of faith and inclusion. For me, my entire theology comes down to helping people on the outside move into the inside, to know they're loved. And so being disabled certainly had a big influence on that.
Do you think there are ways that churches can and faith communities really can improve for disabled people and help them have more visibility within their faith communities?
I think just pay attention. I mean, there's a lot of practical physical barriers. There's a lot of inaccessible churches. And I mean, I'm a wheelchair user, so I understand it from that perspective primarily, but also, even with other disabilities and things, just to know that people need different accommodations and help work toward those accommodations and help lower the barriers. Because again, that's what faith really does, right? It helps. You're supposed to, at its best, let me say it that way, rather than what you're supposed to do. At its best, faith is about, again, bringing people into the circle of love.
And you've pivoted from traditional ministry to being a musician and running a nonprofit. Tell me more about what that's been like and what you enjoy about it.
I did. I was a musician long before I was a pastor, actually. And, I've been around a while, and I mentioned my advancing years a little bit. And so I've been a musician since I was about 16, and so 40 years. And, so I did that first, and then I was in banking, and then I was in advertising sales for a long time. And then I made my way into ministry and then back into music. So I've kind of gone all the way full circle, but really like the work with the nonprofit and the music, it's another way to communicate the message, right? Another way to be inclusive, using music to help fund wheelchair van grants, which is what the nonprofit does, is super important to me because I realized how difficult that process can be and how expensive that process can be. And the music itself is just another platform to bring the message of equity, of justice, and of inclusion and love.
Is there a reason why that message of inclusion and love is like so important to you? Or was there like a moment in your life where you were like, I know no matter what, this is the message I'm trying to spread? Was there kind of like a pivotal moment where you realized the world needed more of that?
I think it's a bunch of little moments, and I think it's a bunch of little moments for a lot of people. I think one thing disability does is make you, again, more aware, right, and more empathetic and understanding. And so it's a bunch of little moments where you kind of see and feel what it's like to be on the outside and then know that you want to bring people on the inside. So I don't know if it's one moment, but, I think of a lot of people, disability advocates who were kind to me and willing to have conversations with me early on in my journey and then again later on in my journey. And, that's what it's about. It's about community. It's about connection. And all those things to me speak to love and inclusion.
If you could give advice to a younger Chris or another person with a disability who's just getting started on their self-advocacy journey, what would you tell them?
Keep going. Keep going. Keep pushing. Don't let what you can't do stop you from doing what you can. It can be scary, but a lot of times it's maybe not as scary as you think. I kind of think of it like skipping rocks. I remember when I was first going to seminary, for example, I wasn't as particularly religious as some of the other people who I knew would be there. And I thought, how can I possibly do all this? But you don't really do that. Again, like think of a skipping of a rock on a lake, or a pond. It bounces one place and then it bounces another place and then it bounces a little more. And pretty soon you're across the pond, right? And so just don't be afraid. Just roll forward and be yourself.
You can listen to the Disabilities Beat segment on demand. View a transcript and plain language description for every episode on our website at WBFO.org. I'm Emily Watkins. Thanks for listening.